My trek today brings me deep into the region of Cumbria, well south of the English border. I'm in Abbeytown. I'm here to explore an abbey today that has a unique significance held all on its own. A very special history. When we think of abbeys that were sacked and burned during the Scottish Wars of Independence, we think of Melrose, Dryborough or Kelso. Or on the English side of the border, we tend to veer towards Northumberland and think of places like Hexham. But just south of Carlisle, on the Solway coast, this place wreaked the wrath of the Scottish invaders just as much as anywhere else. This is Holme Cultram Abbey. Now, the nave, 13th century, which remains, is very impressive. It was much larger back in the times of Robert the Bruce. But this abbey was in the front line during the Scottish Wars. King Edward I, Longshanks himself, came here often. He stopped here. He stopped here in the year 1300. He had ships docked at Skinburn nearby for supplies and victuals. And he made his way to the siege of Carlaverock. Simon Fraser was in his army at that point. But Edward came here on many occasions. His final occasion would see him leave here, go to Lanarcost, and then breathe his last at Burgh by Sands. But this abbey is not only famous for hosting royalty like King Edward I, there are other more prominent characters within that era that play a vital part and have memories here. It's fantastic to see these yew trees in this old and ancient place. There are some remarkable tombstones here. some really old graves. And of course there are many, because it was a medieval establishment, that have no stones. And that these are later additions. What a size this place must have been. So volatile were the nature of Scottish raids here that the monks here were given a special license to bear arms. Now I can't find that anywhere else in the history books. We have a marvellous gravestone here. Not medieval, but 1755. They say that when Longshanks died at Burgh by Sands, his body was to lay in state in the nearby St Michael's Church. But the army would not go north. Edward would be taken south to Westminster, but it's said that his entrails were buried here at Holme Cultram. Although we have no way of knowing where Edward's entrails were buried, we can suppose that they were near a high altar in here. But another important person is buried here, somewhere in this churchyard. And that's the father of Robert the Bruce. Robert Bruce, the 6th of Annandale. Now we don't know specifically where Robert Bruce is buried, the father to the future King of Scots. But there is something here of remarkable antiquity that very much pertains to the history of the Bruce family. Contrary to what many people may think, the history of the Bruces and the English is not one of enmity. The Bruces were very close to King Henry III. They served with him. They fought with him. Robert Bruce, the father of Scotland's future king, accompanied his father, who was in the same company as Lord Edward, still to become King Edward I, at the Battle of Lewes. And after that battle, he had to pay a ransom to one Simon de Montfort for the release of his father. Robert Bruce the father also took part in the 8th Crusade. He held Carlisle against the Scots under an attack against Wallace and Comyn. Robert Bruce the father was also with King Edward when the English defeated the Scots at the Battle of Dunbar in 1296, and seeing an opening there with a real dent put in the Balliol cause, he proposed that he would take the place of Balliol as King of Scots, and King Edward I reply, "Have we nothing else to do but win kingdoms for you?" And with that comment, putting to bed any ambitions Robert Bruce the father may have had of becoming King of Scots. This is wonderful. It really is. Look at the detail in these old stones. The stonemason who carved these, block by block, cylinder by cylinder, taking great pride in his work and leaving his own mark on them, not knowing then that it would still be standing and would be appreciated even in this day and age. Something incomprehensible to him. But there is something in here which is of great value to the history of the Bruce family. Look at this. Wow. Beautiful. Now, I mentioned earlier, because of the size of the place, look at the roof up here. It really is beautiful. Because of the size of the place, we have no way of knowing where Robert the Bruce's father is buried. But we have one very special thing, and here it is. This, my friends, is the coffin lid of Bruce's father. The man who fathered the greatest king in the history of Scotland. This is the lid of his coffin. Where specifically in the Abbey grounds it was found, we don't know. And it's not beyond reason To think that Robert the Bruce touched this himself. It's a fairly thick piece and extremely heavy. Very impressive. After all these centuries. Holme Cultram Abbey. As you can see, still very much in use. The entrance of Jesus into Jerusalem on the white donkey. Very impressive stonework. Remarkably well kept. And it retains that real medieval look to it. That roof is just superb. So it's not beyond reason to surmise that all the Bruces were in here. Now here's a remarkable fact. Once Bruce had gotten a real grasp of Scotland, his southern raids became more frequent. He exacted heavy taxes on places that were unprotected by their English king. But here, at Holme Cultram, despite the fact that his father was interred here, in the year 1319, that did not stop King Robert the Bruce putting this place to the flames. In one way, it gives us an insight into the mindset and the mentality of Robert the Bruce, but in another way, it's all very confusing as well. Or it gives a hint to what the war was really like. Imagine your own parents, or family, or loved ones interred in a place that's sacred to you, very special, and yet it does not deter making a solid statement against your enemy in enemy territory by sacking the place and putting it to the flame and putting the people to the sword. That's what happened here. And it's very difficult to infer what Bruce's emotions were, knowing his father was interred here in 1304. All those years before, what he couldn't have foreseen what his son would accomplish. And yet Bruce would vent his spleen against Edward II because he did not recognise him as King of Scots. And Bruce's southern raids, make no mistake about it, were absolutely brutal. It's a phenomenal thing because this Holme Cultram Abbey is just tucked away on some back roads away down the Solway coast, and you have to go out your way to make it here. Burgh by Sands is only a short distance up the road, but it's well worth the trek. I wonder where exactly Bruce's father was buried here. And when Bruce's men were running rampant through the grounds here in 1319, and I've no doubt they visited it almost on a yearly basis before then and thereafter, that when he watched this place go up in smoke, maybe he thought, just maybe, he thought, here's one for you, Dad. Here's one for you. In defiance of Edward I denying the Bruces what they saw as their royal right. Robert Bruce would father 12 children. A couple of them died in childhood. They didn't get beyond that. 7 females: Isabella, Maud, Margaret, Christiana, Elizabeth. It's said that when Robert Bruce was on crusade, his friend, colleague and knight Adam Kilconquhar lost his life, and Robert the Bruce made the trip to Turnberry in Ayr to seek out Marjorie, Countess of Carrick, and break the news to her. She fell in love with him. It's said that she held him prisoner, and he married her, and by right became Earl of Carrick. He strikes me in history as one of the more passive members of the Bruce family, certainly when you compare him to his father, the competitor, Robert the Bruce's grandfather. I think that man inculcated a very strong character in the Bruces, and that was certainly showing in the first two, Robert Bruce and Edward Bruce. That passivity may have passed over into the likes of Nigel Bruce, Thomas and Alexander Bruce, because Robert and Edward certainly had a determined ambition to reach greater things. Little did he know that his sons would become respectively King of Scots and King of Ireland. But he had no way of knowing his brothers did not shirk supporting Robert and his cause. And apart from Edward dying in battle, Nigel, Thomas and Alexander would pay dearly with their lives, suffering horrendous executions. As I mentioned earlier, the Bruces were very close to English royalty. And that dates all the way back to King Henry II and King Henry III. It's easy to see. We often think, oh, the Bruces changed sides and they were with the English so much, but the Bruce lands in England brought double the money that the Scottish lands brought them. So you have that for a starter, because it's always about mostly money. The second one, it's about power. None of the Bruces ever swore fealty to John Balliol. These were arch rivals, and they remained that way until the end of the Balliols in this country and the Commons, the most powerful noble family in Scotland. The Bruces had this never say die attitude, and they would never be denied in their quest for their own greatness. Robert Bruce could never have known, out of those 12 children, the steel hearts, the chip off the old block of the grandfather, the competitor Robert Bruce, that the future King of Scots and Robert and Edward Bruce would have. I think they were a real resemblance of Robert Bruce, the competitor. So somewhere in these grounds, perhaps in one of these trenches that I stand in now, lie the mortal remains of Robert Bruce, 6th Earl of Annandale. A very different man from the one portrayed in Braveheart with leprosy and scheming and all of this in nature here, but he lies somewhere in here. His remains likely never to be found. How would you identify them, really? But from such long ago. But it's good that the coffin lid is here. And this place, although it plays a quiet part now in our modern world, played a large part during the Scottish Wars of Independence and Anglo-Scottish Wars. This place even had a castle built at nearby Woolsey to protect it from the Scottish raids. That protection would prove to be unsuccessful. For once Edward I passed away, new, fresh blood was coming up in Scotland. Bruce would wage war in his own land first. He would win his battles at home. He would oust every enemy from Scotland. And during his lifetime, he would restore a nation. He would restore a pride of nationality. And the country would prosper. But nothing that good lasts forever when you have a powerful enemy. I often make comparisons with the Plantagenet family and the Bruce family. When you have King Edward I, who has this iron ambition and these grand plans, and the only thing that thwarts him from those plans is age. And then he's taken over by a much weaker son who does not share his ambition. And then most of his plans fall by the wayside. But then a grandson comes along, in Edward III. Some say he was the greatest king ever. And his grandfather had paved the way for him. He had taken up his grandfather's work, and he would relaunch the old designs on Scotland. Robert the Bruce, the competitor, was a very strong character. He wanted to push the Bruce ambitions and the Bruce rights as far as he could. And he even headed an army at the age of 80 years of age. He was a strong character, very difficult to control, single-minded in his way. But Robert Bruce, the father, was an entirely different prospect. And I got the idea that he was easily shut down by King Edward I. I don't know if Edward I knew it or not, but there was a strong character emerging in the competitor's grandson, Robert the Bruce, the future King of Scots. I think he had to know. He had to know by his actions. He had to know by the events that were leading up to the year 1306, when Bruce killed his rival and made his quest for the throne. Time was on Bruce's side. He would outlive Edward. He would outlast him. And that would frustrate Edward, because I think he knew the quality and the strength of the character that was in Bruce, and that was much too strong for his son and Edward II to face. Edward wanted to do that battle himself. Edward was very much a, if you want something done right, you do it yourself type person. And I think he knew that with him gone, Bruce would thrive. There'd been nothing to stop him. And he was right. Thank you once again for walking in the footsteps. I really appreciate you following me. If you've liked this video, please like, comment, share, hype, but above all, subscribe. Thank you.